Fight Club is a 1999 crime film. An insomniac office worker and a devil-may-care soap maker form an underground fight club that evolves into much more. As the title credits began to roll, we found ourselves backtracking out of a tangled web of neurons. And brain cells. The journey led us to a pour on the sweat-drenched skin of our protagonist, Edward Norton. In a dramatic twist, he found himself staring down the barrel of a gun, held by a menacing man named Tyler, played by Brad Pitt. The clock was ticking, counting down to ground zero as Tyler asked if Norton had anything to say. The narrator, struggling to speak through the cold metal in his mouth, eventually managed to mumble a response. But as Tyler looked out of the high-rise window at the dark city below, Norton's mind drifted to the past, remembering how he had met Tyler. As he started to recount their story, he abruptly stopped himself, bringing us to the beginning of the tale. And so began the gripping story of these two unlikely companions, one a buttoned-up insomniac and the other a charismatic anarchist. The narrator, a traveling product recall specialist for a car company, has not slept for 6 months. His constant jet lag and the stress of his job add to his insomnia. In a desperate attempt to combat his sleeplessness, he finds solace in the tiny life of single-serving soaps and shampoos at each location he visits. But when he can't sleep, he indulges in the pleasures of consumerism, purchasing new decor to add to his already cluttered apartment. Desperate for help, he turns to a doctor who recommends an herbal supplement and a visit to a support group for testicular cancer to see real pain. At the support group, he meets the big mussy Bob Paulson, an ex-bodybuilder and steroid user with an extreme case of gynecomastia. Bob is eager to provide support and comfort to the narrator, and the narrator finally finds peace as he sobs into Bob's enormous breasts. Addicted to the emotional release, the narrator begins attending different support groups each week, feigning illness to fit in. But his system is thrown off balance when he meets Marla Singer, a tourist who attends multiple support groups, including the one for testicular cancer. The narrator is disturbed by her lies and finds himself unable to sleep. The appearance of this mysterious woman sets off a chain of events that will lead him down a dark path of self-discovery, forcing him to confront the truth about his life and the choices he's made. The narrator confronts Marla Singer after a support group meeting, and they strike up an unusual agreement. Rather than ratting each other out for attending multiple groups, they agree to split up the week and exchange numbers. Despite this arrangement, the narrator's insomnia persists, leading him to cross paths with an enigmatic stranger on a flight back from a business trip. This stranger is Tyler Durden, a soap salesman with a penchant for slipping bits of porn between reels when he works as a projectionist at night. They strike up a casual conversation, and the narrator is intrigued by Tyler's unique perspective on emergency procedure manuals in the plane. But when the narrator arrives home to find his 15th-story condominium blasted into the night, he is left with nowhere to go. Desperate for help, he remembers Tyler's business card and gives him a call. They meet in a parking lot behind a bar, where Tyler makes a strange request that the narrator hit him as hard as he can. Puzzled but intrigued, the narrator complies, and they engage in a fistfight that leaves them both feeling strangely euphoric. They share a couple of drinks before Tyler invites the narrator to come live with him. It quickly becomes apparent that Tyler is squatting in a dilapidated house, but the narrator is drawn to his charisma and mysterious nature. As the two men become closer, the narrator is pulled deeper into Tyler's dark world, a world of violence, chaos, and rebellion against the status quo. But as he follows Tyler down this dangerous path, he begins to realize that there may be more to their relationship than he originally thought, and that Tyler may not be the friend he appears to be. In the dark basement of a dingy bar, Tyler and the narrator continue to engage in brutal fistfights. But as their battles become more frequent and intense, other men begin to take notice and join in. With their group of brawlers growing by the day, Tyler decides to take things to the next level and establishes a formal fight club. As the club gains popularity, Tyler and the narrator create a set of rules to govern their meetings, with the first two being you do not talk about Fight Club. Despite the rules, word of the club spreads like wildfire, and soon members are inviting their friends to join in on the action. Through it all, Tyler proves to be a charismatic and unconventional leader, offering his unique and often immoral views on life to anyone who will listen. The narrator's life is spiraling out of control as he continues to be involved in the underground world of Fight Club. Despite the chaos, he can't help but feel drawn to Marla, the woman he met at the support groups. When she overdoses on Xanax, he shows little sympathy and leaves her to her own devices. But fate has other plans in store for him when Tyler Durden enters the scene. Tyler not only saves Marla but also begins a sexual relationship with her, much to the narrator's dismay. Things take a bizarre turn when Marla unexpectedly shows up at the narrator's house the next morning. But that's not all. Tyler enters the kitchen with a big grin on his face and confesses that he and Marla had sex the previous night. As the narrator grapples with the reality of the situation, Tyler demands that he keep quiet about their affair. Will the narrator be able to keep Tyler's secret and continue his double life, or will he be consumed by the dangerous world of Fight Club and its twisted leader? The narrator is about to embark on a strange and unforgettable adventure with Tyler Durden. One night, Tyler takes the narrator to a liposuction clinic to collect human fat for his soap business. According to Tyler, the best fat for soap making comes from human beings. Back in their kitchen, Tyler shows the narrator how to render tallow from the fat and tells him the history of soap making. Suddenly, Tyler plants a wet kiss on the back of the narrator's hand and throws pure lye on it, causing a burning sensation that takes the narrator's breath away. Tyler explains that the burn is a rite of passage and even shows the narrator his own matching burn. Despite the narrator's pain, Tyler forbids him from washing his hand with water, which would worsen the burn, and instead neutralizes it with vinegar. Later, when they meet a cosmetics salesperson at a department store, the narrator is stunned to learn that Tyler's soap sells for an exorbitant price. The narrator is in deep with Tyler and his band of misfits, and things are getting even more out of control. Tyler takes drastic measures to motivate people to pursue their dreams, even if it means holding them at gunpoint. He also challenges Lou, the bar owner, to a brutal fight, leaving him bloody and beaten. But Tyler isn't done yet. He gives the members of the club a homework assignment that involves picking fights with strangers and deliberately losing. It's a strange exercise, but everyone is on board, including Bob, who starts accosting people in public. As the members of the club carry out their assignments, the narrator begins to realize just how far he has gone down the rabbit hole with Tyler and his dangerous antics. Marla had left, and Tyler had a new project brewing in the basement. He had transformed the soap-making lab into an explosives factory. The narrator was intrigued by Tyler's new hobby, and he watched as Tyler mixed ingredients to create volatile compounds. Despite their new endeavor, they continued to run Fight Club, but at a much lower frequency. The narrator was having problems at work and decided to confront his boss with evidence of substandard practices. After negotiating to work from home with a raise, his boss called security on him. In a shocking move, the narrator beat himself up severely to make it look like his boss had assaulted him. When security arrived, they found a battered narrator and an indignant boss, who was subsequently fired. Tyler congratulated the narrator, proud of the way he stood up for himself. Tyler Durden, the enigmatic and charismatic leader of Fight Club, had a new mission for his recruits. He urged them to reject consumerism and the control of authority figures and instead embrace a simpler, more primitive way of living. He called it Project Mayhem, and soon the basement fights were replaced by acts of vandalism and destruction. Despite the increased scrutiny from law enforcement, Tyler managed to convince the lead investigator that his recruits were just regular working-class people. As Project Mayhem grew, so did the divide between Tyler and the narrator, who became increasingly jealous of Tyler's hold on the group. In a fit of rage, the narrator even disfigured one of the new recruits. As they drove away from a Fight Club meeting, Tyler taunted the narrator, pushing him to live his life to the fullest. He even allowed their car to drift into oncoming traffic, chiding the narrator for his weakness. In a moment of clarity, Tyler revealed that he had destroyed the narrator's apartment, and the two men ultimately crashed head-on into another vehicle. Though they survived, the narrator was left with a new perspective on life.
The narrator is left alone with the Mayhem members, but Tyler is nowhere to be found. The group spends their time watching TV and relishing their acts of vandalism. Frustrated and curious, the narrator demands answers from Bob, but the Mayhem member warns him that the first rule of Project Mayhem is not to ask questions. As the days pass, tensions rise, and the situation takes a turn for the worse when Bob dies during a failed sabotage mission. The narrator realizes the danger of the group's activities and decides to disband the group before it's too late. Desperate to find Tyler and put an end to Project Mayhem, the narrator uncovers a list of phone numbers used by Tyler. He embarks on a wild journey, following the list across the country, discovering that fight clubs have sprouted up everywhere. The narrator begins to wonder if Tyler is behind all of this and if he's lost control of his own creation. The narrator is stunned when the bartender at a bar he's visiting greets him with respect and calls him sir. Intrigued, he asks if they know each other. After assuring him that he's not being tested, the bartender reveals that he is Tyler Durden. In disbelief, the narrator rushes back to his hotel room and calls Marla, questioning if they had ever slept together. Marla, frustrated with the conversation, confirms their past relationship and refers to him as Tyler Durden. As the call ends, Tyler suddenly appears before the narrator, accusing him of breaking his promise not to mention Tyler to Marla. After a brief conversation, it becomes clear to both of them that they are the same person, with Tyler being a manifestation of the narrator's insomnia. Overwhelmed, the narrator faints. When he comes to, he finds a new phone list beside him, filled with calls from all over the country. The narrator returns home to find it empty, but a bulletin board catches his attention. It displays folders detailing certain buildings in the financial district that Project Mayhem has infiltrated, and Tyler plans to destroy them, wiping out all credit card company records. The narrator grabs the information and rushes to the police station, confessing everything. But to his horror, he finds out that the officers are Mayhem members and turn on him. Fleeing for his life, the narrator stumbles upon an unmarked van filled with nitroglycerin and decides to disarm the bomb. Tyler appears and provokes him, but the narrator successfully disarms it. Suddenly, the Tyler personality resurfaces, reactivating the bomb. The two engage in a brutal fight, which appears oddly on surveillance cameras, as the narrator is only fighting himself. The Tyler personality ultimately prevails, and they flee to another building to witness the destruction. The narrator is at his wit's end. He's standing in front of a gun with Tyler, the enigmatic man he thought was his friend. Tyler urges him to finish the job, to end his life and become a martyr for Project Mayhem. But the narrator's mind is blank, he can't think of anything worth dying for. Tyler, ever the jester, remarks that it's like flashback humor. The narrator pleads with him to give up the plan, but Tyler is resolute, convinced that he's saving humanity from the vices of consumerism. He claims there will be no casualties, as all the workers in the targeted buildings are Mayhem members. The narrator realizes that he has the same power as Tyler, and when he sees Tyler with the gun, he knows that the gun is in his hand too. He raises it to his own head and tells Tyler to listen. The narrator asserts that his eyes are open, then puts the gun in his mouth and pulls the trigger. The bullet misses his brain, but Tyler isn't so lucky. The narrator sees Tyler's body fall with a gaping wound in the back of his head. As he recovers, members of Project Mayhem arrive with snacks and Marla in tow, just as Tyler instructed. As the explosions went off, Marla stood next to Tyler, watching in awe as the buildings crumbled before them. Tyler turned to Marla and took her hand, telling her that everything would be fine. As they watched the destruction, he said, "You met me at a very strange time in my life." Marla looked at him in confusion, wondering who this man truly was. Tyler smiled and whispered something in her ear, causing her to gasp. Suddenly, the Mayhem members returned with medical supplies, and Tyler was able to patch up his wounds. The group watched as the city burned and crumbled around them, knowing that their actions would change the world forever.